Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. You know who it is, and thank you for listening to this new episode of the Needle Drop Podcast. Before we get into the show, we want to remind you that this is a listener-supported podcast, which means it exists because of those who support it, and they do so in a few different ways. One, they get weekly downloads of this show via a monthly subscription on our support page. We will link you to it in the description box. Looks like this, button right there. Also, you can hit up our Amazon Associates link, where basically we get a kickback for all purchases you make on Amazon.com when you use this link. Only works in the US though, unfortunately, but you can use it to basically make purchases you were already planning on making on Amazon, and that helps out this podcast as well. Also, you can stream it on YouTube and share it with a friend. All support is appreciated. All right, thank you for listening again, and on with the show. Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's creakiest music nerd, and I hope you're doing well. You are listening to the latest episode of the Needle Drop Podcast, where we do a series of interviews with musicians, content creators of various sorts. And speaking with me in this episode, I'm going to be talking with UK producer, up-and-comer, recent Brainfeeder Records signee, Iglooghost. He has a new EP out titled Chinese New Year. Reviewed it not too long ago. It's definitely going to be on my list for my favorite EPs of the year. We're going to be talking about the music on this EP, sort of where he sees himself going with his art in the future, and just sort of his present day stuff as well as, I don't know, maybe what he's doing on the side as well. He was telling me that he was just going to school while simultaneously kind of being this regularly blogged about and talked about music producer. How you doing, dude?
Yo!
That was a really hyped intro. You just came right in there.
That was some old school Soulja Boy shit.
You really threw it back on that one.
Yeah. In real life, I did like the slide and everything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
you know, my aunt... when my aunt got married, and she got married sort of late in life, her coworkers, as a joke, they played that song on her wedding day on the dance floor, and her niece on her husband's side of the family and me seemed to be the only people there who knew the dance. So it was just me and her. We did the dance. We cranked that Soulja Boy just all the way.
Shit. Hell yeah! Soulja Boy is that's like the soundtrack for me. Well, I guess you guys call it high school. We call it upper school here. But when I started that in I don't know what grade this is. Probably 8th grade or something. Fucking Soulja Boy was the soundtrack to everybody had these Sony Ericsson phones. We were Bluetoothing, cranked that. It was past the Arab. It was I don't know, that one where he talks about his report cards. Shit was crazy.
Yeah, Soulja Boy came out when I was in college, and that song was hot. That song was playing all the time, as well as do you remember? And I've brought this song up with other people who are my age, and they don't remember it at all. Do you remember, or have you heard the Chicken Noodle Soup song?
Oh shit! Wait, how does that go?
Chicken noodle soup with a soda on the side. Chicken noodle soup. Yeah. Chicken noodle soup. That song was all over the place.
Did you guys have Bebo in America? B-E-B-O?
I don't remember having Bebo.
No, that was the social network that we had, but...
Oh, okay. I thought we were still talking about a music thing. I vaguely remember Bebo. Yeah, yes, I do vaguely remember Bebo.
Yeah, I think Chicken Noodle Soup and flipping... What was that? That peanut butter jelly time thing.
Yeah, that was one of the earliest internet memes.
Yeah,
it was pretty early internet meme.
Albino black sheep flash animation stuff, that stuff was good.
And Newgrounds too.
Oh yeah.
You know, I heard, and I don't know if they're sort of doing anything to kind of prevent this. A lot of that flash animation is kind of going through a bit of a Y2K kind of thing.
How do you mean?
The thing is,
HTML5.
Yep. I hear because of that stuff and just the updates with Flash, a lot of that Flash that stuff thrives on is no longer going to be relevant. It's no longer going to function. Right. So all of those amazing, horrible, crude, offensive, like game-changing Flash animations are gonna be completely gone.
We need like an archive. That's precious.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. You know, the thing is, people complain about this idea that you can't be forgotten on the internet, and whatever you do on the internet is going to haunt you forever. But I mean, I think this coming sort of change with Flash and HTML, I mean, it could kind of erase all of this stuff from the internet by just making it completely inaccessible because people won't be able to see it anymore.
Oh God. Do you remember? Nah, we're gonna lose like Swifty5. We're gonna lose Weeble and Bob.
Holy shit! Did you just say 55?
Yeah.
By Group X?
Yeah, I think I did.
Dude, I bought that. I'm pretty sure I bought that CD off the internet.
Really?
Yeah.
Don't they come from like a fictional country?
I think they just were pretending to.
Yeah.
I think they were just doing accents.
That stuff was amazing.
It was pretty amazing. That and the I can't believe we're talking about this right now. That and the I'm trying to remember. Do you remember Three Brain with that school bus song?
Not really.
No. Okay. It was like a really weird song with a squirrel.
Right.
They also did that And We song. And We. That song was sort of popular.
Shit. Yeah.
You do remember it?
So yeah.
Yeah, if you were into 55, you probably heard And We.
Yeah.
Like that was pretty popular too.
I'm gonna look that up to jog my memory, but like that's somewhere deep in my subconscious.
Although I know some of that stuff has made its way onto YouTube now, so you could definitely search it on YouTube.
Yeah.
But sort of to see that stuff in its original Flash on the original site where it came from, I think is a good reminder of just how weird the internet used to be.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, as somebody who seems like they've been on the internet for a long time, and it seems like, you know, you know a lot of these same weird, obscure, older memes that I know. So you're familiar with a lot of these same portals that I was on, but obviously you were younger when you were introduced to a lot of it. Whereas I still remember a good chunk of my childhood having no computer at all, you know, and just no internet at all.
Yeah.
Having said all of that, do you feel like the internet these days is maybe sort of more sanitary than it used to be?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a bit less punk. Like, kids like. I mean, we used to sort of create like forums and things. Like I've made about 4 forums since I've like been on the internet. Just like when I was a little kid, like I'd make like a Pokemon forum where there'd be like 4 usernames and they'd like all be my mates. But it was more about like carving out your own sort of like weird clubs. Whereas now maybe it seems like people only hang out on like Twitter and Facebook and things. Like nobody's sort of carving out their own lanes. I'm not sure.
No, I could definitely see that. I mean, I remember back around that same time where I live in Connecticut, there were a lot of forums devoted to the local Connecticut music scene, and people would regularly post flyers and information about shows. And the funny thing about that is that people would actually show up to the shit, you know, as opposed to people putting up like one Facebook update after another of being like, hey guys, check out my DJ set. And like nobody comes because nobody cares. Yeah. But I remember one site that was pretty popular around the time, and you can, you know, sort of see how dated this was, is that there was a site called ctska.com. Right. So this was obviously during the 2000s when ska was very popular. And basically all the local groups, all the nationally touring groups, whenever they would come through town, they were updating there and letting you know that's where the ska bands are playing. Come here, this VFW, this venue, we're doing we're doing a local ska show. Come on down. And people would show up. The shit was huge. And now it seems like people aren't as sort of weaved into these really underground, really intimate groups anymore. It's sort of like everybody is tossed into this huge lake where everybody's trying to fight for, I guess, relevance and retweets and favorites and likes.
I guess maybe say what you want about it, but Tumblr kind of, it does sort of have its own little burrows. Like I have nothing to do with this stuff, but like there's like these fandoms and things, and I'm not even sure how people sort of separate their own little groups on one website, but it seems to happen. Like You got little clubs and stuff on Tumblr.
No, I definitely agree. Tumblr is one of my favorite, but simultaneously one of my least favorite social media platforms.
Yeah.
Mostly because of what you just said, because there are some really great little burrows over there. And one of my favorite things to do on Tumblr is I just randomly follow back people who either mention me or I know just follow me. And then I just see the really weird videos, art, and text, and a myriad of other things that these people are reblogging. But the flip side of Tumblr is that when I'm posting on it or when I'm putting things up on it, I somehow just piss people off by just existing. It seems like a lot of people are just very much in their feelings on Tumblr, and it's just
yeah, you definitely got this vibe going on right now where it's kind of you versus Tumblr, it seems.
Sometimes, like I like to I like to rattle those cages a little bit occasionally. Just the idea of me being controversial to me is just really funny because I feel like I'm one of the least controversial people on the planet. There's no I don't have any like skeletons in my closet or anything like that. I'm not harboring any really dangerous opinions or anything, but I somehow managed to.
Problematic guy.
I'm just a problematic guy who just isn't as big a fan of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy as some people would like, and that's really it.
That's a big issue, apparently.
It is a big issue. It gets brought up a lot, but I just made a video on my other channel where I was making mention of the fact that when you say something, you got to own it, or I think even if people think you're wrong, those who are level-headed, they'll at least respect the fact that you're owning what you say.
Yes.
When people bring that up, I'm like, yeah, I did give it that score. I'll often retweet people who make mention of that to me just to be like, hey, everybody, just reminding you that I did this.
Yeah.
And just letting you know. Just seems like you guys are still hung up on it. So I'll just remind you a little bit.
Come get some.
That too. Any fucking takers on the internet? I'm down, man. I'm down for an internet rumble. So, all right, let's get into this EP that you put out a little earlier this year. It was easily some of the just zaniest, whacked out shit I've heard all year. And I want you to go into a little detail and just kind of enlighten me a bit more as to this really weird world, this really weird imaginary world or concept world that seems like the press release that went out with your music addressed but didn't fully go into. I kind of have a feeling that you could sort of write a book on this imaginary world that this really strange worm character that is supposed to be featured in your music exists in.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of am writing a book. I'm gonna do like a little zine of like a bunch of little hand-drawn comic strips that I kind of wanna articulate like the story a little bit more, but it's still something I'm kind of like improvising with and like unfolding gradually. But yeah, the EP it's not essential, but if you want, it follows the tale of this worm made of gelatin, and it doesn't really have a gender, because sometimes it's voiced by my dad and sometimes it's voiced by my little sister, but the worms, it doesn't know why, but it's flying through all these portals like seemingly infinitely into like all these bizarre worlds of candy like colors and all these this like pink fog everywhere and these mountains that are like growing out of the floor and stuff. And it constantly has like this sad expression on its face. And I mean, I'm gonna explain the fate of the worm eventually with like an album or something, but that's kind of what the EP is gonna feel like the worm kind of dodging all these fruit and stuff that's getting like thrown at it, and I don't know, just sort of flying about, if you get me.
So through these wormholes, with this fruit, with these different dimensions, in your mind, in your imagination, are any traditional rules of physics or science or black holes or anything like that being applied here, or is something way more abstract going on?
No, it's just everything can somehow fly about. That's pretty much it.
It kind of reminded me of I can't name the character off of the top of my head. I think his name. No, I can't remember. It reminds me of an Adventure Time episode, sort of when Finn and Jake are kind of like caught in that, I don't know, that weird space-time dimension.
Oh shit!
And
Do you mean
that
the
really
guy who's like 2D and he can like walk through the walls?
Yes. The guy who's pink and he's 2D and he kind of yes. And he's like kind of he's kind of portrayed as almost like a shadow on the wall that they're talking to, like this pink shadow on a yellow wall.
Yeah, that guy's cool, and he has like a hot tub or something.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of that. It just seems like it's coming from this sort of cartoony place, but it seems very influenced by real misunderstood science.
Yeah, it's definitely quite silly.
Okay, so this worm character, I mean, there aren't like huge verses and like tons of I guess story-like lyrics going on in your music. So how exactly do you sort of tell this story of the worm? Do you see yourself using more lyrics in the future, or do you see yourself kind of merely telling the story through sound?
I mean, in a way, I didn't really want it to be this thing that is essential to enjoy, like the music too. More of just this optional thing on the side. But something that I had fun playing with was that I use the same synth in every single song. I'm not sure if anybody caught on to that, but it's this quite wobbly, pitch shifty. I don't know. It sort of sounds like elastic to me, but in my head, I kind of imagine that to be the worm. So that's bending around like all these elements and all these tracks. Yeah, and I think that's kind of fun to sort of follow about. Like if you actually catch that, it might be cool.
And other sounds that you have in the mix on some of these tracks, do you have some of these sounds applied to in your head, sort of other things that are going on? Like, are some sounds the fruit, or are some sounds like the wormhole?
Like, there's like I got my dad to scream in our kitchen, and I can't remember how I did it, but I made this like weird squeezing sort of portal sound. And that's pretty much at the start and maybe end of like basically every track, or is somehow like in the middle of a song.
Okay.
Yeah, and I imagine that to be like the worm actually going through a portal.
Okay. So I mean, yeah, obviously, like you were just saying, and I think I do want to say the name of that Adventure Time character is Prismo.
That's the boy.
So obviously, like you were saying, it's not anything that you need to read into too deeply to enjoy the music itself, but you're seeing these sounds as like physical, kind of colorful, actual manifestations of something in your imagination. They're not just like simply a sound.
Yeah, for sure.
And each one is kind of a bit of a character in a way, and interacting with the other sounds, but in some way it all kind of comes together in a really musical sense.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah. Okay. You like that? Well, then I guess I guess my next question is, how do you sort of continue that storyline in your mind? How do you sort of continue imagining the sounds in this way while simultaneously paying attention to the music of what you're doing? Because obviously you have to be conscious of the fact that the song is at a tempo of some sort, or that that a certain part of the song is in a key, or that you're working within a certain chord progression or something, you know?
Well, I think it would be interesting to start maybe eventually. I've got this idea that, because I kind of make pictures and stuff, so I want to start doing these animations. I don't know if it would be 3D or 2D or anything, of like, I guess a continuation of the story, but then actually make music after I've got the visuals down. So I'm gonna have to bend all these synths and the structure of the song to how things move in the animation. I think it would be quite cool. I think like that's sort of how people score films and stuff. Like that would be quite interesting, rather than to do something by BPM and like bars.
All right. So moving away from sort of this concept that you have going on with this EP and your music so far. I mean, we'll see how that kind of pans out in the future. I mean, you are planning on having an album out through Brainfeeder at some point?
Yeah.
Would that be for next year or?
Yeah, if all goes to plan, probably like summer.
Okay. Well, then I want to ask you about something specifically about the making of this EP and your music that I found kind of interesting, and that's the whole idea that you involve your dad and your little sister, and you kind of pitch shift their voices to appear on the record. When their voices do appear, you're sort of imagining them as the same sort of Worm character when they do when they do have a voice on the music.
Yeah, somehow.
And sort of when you're asking them to participate, how exactly does that conversation go down? I mean, my dad's
down to clown. He just went for it. But like,
oh really?
My little sister, I've got a bribe her with like, she watches all these YouTubers, and she's all this product placement like gets stuck into her brain. And one of these YouTubers is drinking Monster Energy. So like every time I want her to do a vocal thing, I have to go up to Tesco and like get a Monster Energy, melt her brain, give her that, and then I'm allowed to record her. It's a hassle.
That is the exact opposite of what I would have expected.
Really?
Like I would have expected a little kid to jump at the opportunity to yell, be noisy, scream, be annoying, go crazy, go bonkers, and sort of.
She's like,
yeah.
I think she's about 12. I'm a bad person for not knowing, but
got it.
She's on that self-conscious vibe right now, but
she's at the age of understanding that her input, that you wanting something from her, that has value to it. So she's going to take advantage of that. Okay, no, that's smart then. That's fine. But your dad, I think that's really funny that he's just totally game.
Yeah. I mean, he's in a punk band and he does the vocals and he dresses up in like women's clothes and wears lipstick on his face and just like screams for hours. So I mean, he's pretty used to it.
Okay, but well, obviously you aren't literally composing punk music, but I imagine in a way that punk ethos sort of informs what you're doing in some kind of way.
Yeah, hopefully. I don't really like to do what other people are doing.
Is that sort of what defines that ethos to you, kind of going your own path and just not really caring what the majority is preoccupied with?
Yeah, I think that's punk. I think punk is just pretty much any form of rebelling against the norm, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of people talk to me and ask me about and I agree with you because I see that sentiment in a lot of modern art. I see that sentiment in a lot of people's records, but it's not manifested in just simply 3 chords on a guitar and someone yelling on a microphone anymore. You know, so when people ask me like, hey, aren't there any new punk records? In my head, I'm like, yeah, there are tons of great, punk records as far as the ethos goes, but I don't think there are any great records out right now that sound exactly like Nevermind the Bullocks, if that's what you're asking me.
I mean, I think SoundCloud is punk. Like the fact that all these little kids are just uploading like all these tunes, putting stuff out for free on Bandcamp. It's all DIY. Like they've just nicked like Ableton or something, just made the stuff in their room. Like that's pretty much punk. That's like zine culture. That's like pressing records yourself. Just in like
that's really interesting it's really interesting that you phrase it like that, because when I talk to people who are like my age or a little older, when issues and when topics like DIY come up, they get super sour over sort of I guess what you would say are the advantages that the current generation has, and say they're not DIY, they're not really doing it DIY. When we were doing it DIY, we were printing our own zines over at the Staples, and we were printing our own 7 inches and yada yada yada. And I mean, I don't know, while that's the case, I mean, if you guys had the technology that the current generation has, you would have taken advantage of it in the same way.
Like just because it's not particularly hard that's not taken away from the sentiment.
Yeah, I mean, it's even though there are elements of it that are easier, there are other elements of it that are now harder because you've essentially raised the difficulty bar in a lot of ways, because now issues such as, you know, getting your music out there, getting your music recorded are now made easier to everybody.
Yeah.
So now it's things like grabbing people's attention, which are incredibly hard.
Yeah.
Whereas back in the day, I mean, if you managed to get through all of these financial hurdles, if you had a finished professional sounding product, it wouldn't be too difficult to at least turn a few heads.
Yeah.
And once you've turned those heads, they kind of will stay in your direction and wait for the moment that you do something else. Whereas nowadays, it seems like the real difficulty comes in grabbing attention, and then once you've grabbed it, actually maintain that attention, you know, for a period long enough to the point where when you put out your next album, people still care about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say any names, but a good friend of mine who makes music, I mean, his stuff is like still amazing, and he just finished this record, and it's sounding really good. But like, the label he was with didn't want to put it out, and it just seemed to be more because his name has sort of been in the air for a bit of a long time. But we were saying, like, if I gave them the record, like they'd probably put it out, just because, like, my name is just new and sort of, I don't know, a little bit talked about. But it is weird, like, people sort of seem to have a sell-by date, and it kind of disregards the actual quality of the work.
Yeah, no, it's true. So I guess going off of that, I want to ask if an artist finds themselves, and not saying that you need to name names or anything like that, like you just said, if an artist finds themselves, or if you find yourself in that position, what are the options that you have from there? Are you just, you know, cold fucking liver, or can you put out some music for free and somehow generate interest again? It seems to sort of take it into a hip hop direction for a second. It seems like that was kind of the issue that Waka Flocka Flame was just having. I just reviewed his new mixtape, and part of the reason he came out with that sequel mixtape to Flockavelli is that his label just refused to release the sequel to that album, merely off of the
Flockavelli 1.5 going to be the second one then?
Flockavelli, he tried to put out Flockavelli 2.
Yeah.
So to get up hype for that, because his label refused to just release it, he did the 1.5 mixtape to generate some interest. Right. Because months ago he had complained that his label isn't releasing Flockavelli 2. Yeah. They're saying that they won't release it because I'm not as hot as they want me to be. So I think he just put out this mixtape now, which I think is good. I thought it was a good mixtape. To sort of generate interest again. So as an artist who might find themselves in that position, where your label is being like, oh, well, you know, the thing is, not as many people are tweeting about you as we would like. I don't exactly know how that conversation goes down. Yeah. What exactly are your avenues and your options to go from there? Can you simply, like you were just saying, if I handed them the record, they love it because I'm new, I'm this, I'm that. Can you merely just start putting out music under another name and just start anonymously releasing music and generate interest again? Yeah,
that's sort of, I think we even had that conversation, like, even a name change would sort of help the situation. Like, that's fucked up. That's crazy.
No, it is crazy. You know, the internet has really sort of sped up the demand for new that we have, and it was at a point where I felt like it was at maybe a livable medium, where if somebody came out with a new record and it was great, even if it took them a year or so to come out with another record, people would still be anticipating it. Whereas it seems like these days, even if your last record was good, if it took you 2 years to come out with your next one, nobody's interested. Yeah, which is kind of nuts.
That's the scariest shit.
It is scary, you know, simply just not sort of giving everybody instantaneous gratification for a single moment is enough for them to just stop caring about you. Yeah,
I mean, I'm in university right now, and I think the sole reason why I haven't dropped out yet is because I know that for some reason in this day and age, like, careers are just more finite than ever. Like, my whole stuff could just fade into like irrelevance in about 2 years easily.
Sure.
It's crazy.
It is. And it's why sometimes when people email me and they ask me, hey dude, I'm about to take all these like music production courses, you know, so that I could either become a full-time artist or I could become a full-time producer, like in a studio or something. I mean, I severely advise against it unless you're a prodigy or you really know what you're doing, or you just are so dead set on it that you can't see yourself doing anything else. And when I say anything else, I mean not even breathing or sleeping.
Yeah.
You know, I don't mean like you kind of like music producing, but also you like, you're really big into like bowling or something, or like, I don't know, journalism or electrical engineering. I mean, like you've got to be so devoted to it that it literally consumes your entire life.
It's shiesty out here.
It is, you know, and the thing is, some of the people who I know who are the most talented are self-taught. You know, they didn't necessarily go to school for that sort of thing. And if you if you have the opportunity to, I encourage anyone to, before you shell out tens of thousands of dollars to study music production at a school, see if you can get an internship at a small studio where you can get behind the board and actually see what doing that stuff is like.
Yeah.
But that's another conversation, I guess. So moving on from sort of your album in the future, and I guess just kind of how finite music careers are, I imagine that in your head, you're still pretty set and you're still pretty, positive about the future of what you're going to be doing with this next album.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I guess one of the main things that I always want to do is like I wouldn't put out music if I feel like it's already been said. So I mean, hopefully that's gonna help me along the way. Like I could so easily be putting out like a beat every night, but like I just don't feel the need to make anything that is this thing that is being said every day. Like I mean, no disrespect to anyone who, you know, is making like fuck, I don't even know how to explain it, like normal beats, but I just feel like it's important to figure out what hasn't been said and try and make something along the lines of that.
No, I mean, I sympathize with that. I mean, I think in your music, I hear some obvious influences, but you're not just trying to like, you're just not trying to like carry the Jay Dilla torch or anything like that.
I hope so.
You know, you're trying to sort of forge something for yourself. You're not just trying to relive what other established artists have sort of done with their work.
Yeah, that just seems boring to me.
Which is something I think is kind of a little, I don't know, underappreciated in this day and age a little bit. I mean, as much as we are obsessed with things that are new, simultaneously, I feel like a lot of people tend to really quickly kind of jump on and co-sign things that just kind of have already handed you what you've already heard, you know, just kind of, but just with another artist, with another name, with another album cover. And I think sort of doing something that's truly different, doing something that's like seriously experimental or really the next step for whatever genre you're working in, that can be kind of a risk.
Yeah, I think, well, the people who have taken that risk are the ones with staying power. Like even someone like Flying Lotus, like he's never gonna fade into irrelevance. No matter what he does in the near future. The thing, like the mark that he's already made in the sound of modern music it's already been set, and that in a way I guess saves them from that finite music career we were talking about.
Sure. And I imagine it's got to be just super exciting to know that sort of you're not just signed to some label. Like what you're doing is kind of in a way a bit of a cosign.
Yeah.
You know, it's like he sees, yeah, I mean, obviously he sees your music as something that can work to his label's benefit, but I don't think he would be putting it out if he didn't see the artistry and see the talent in it.
Yeah, that's just fucking crazy. I don't know. That's still not real to me, to be honest. Yeah, I was just always that kid who was like I think I easily have more of Flying Lotus's music on my iTunes than he does himself. Like I'd like find old mixes from about 2006 and scan the entire mix for like an unreleased Philo song. Like I could tell if it's a Philo song, even if it didn't even have like a track list. Like I knew what synths he was using and shit. Like I studied it. I studied his shit, and I think in a way it made a lot of my older shit. Like when I was first coming up, when I was about 16, like it was pretty derivative. Like I'd just be working, like I'd be thinking like, but what would Philo do? Like that kind of thing. But I don't know. It's just insane that it came around full circle, I guess.
Why, I think there has to kind of be a point in your music making career where you are doing something derivative. Obviously not when you're 10 or 15 years into it, although that's how it ends up working for some people. But at least at the starting point, I think you have no other choice other than to just kind of make what you know before you sort of create something that, you know, nobody even foresaw coming down the pipe. So yeah, that's actually pretty insane that you studied his music that closely, to the point, I imagine, where it just kind of lost its mysticism and you knew exactly what synths he was using.
Kinda. I mean, it was still magic. But yeah.
So is Flying Lotus's music, in your opinion, as somebody who's studied his stuff so closely, to the point where, you know, obviously it's you were making music that was incredibly derivative, as you say, at a time. Yeah. To people who are sort of outside of this world of experimental producers like him and yourself, who are making the type of music that you are, is the music as I guess I want to say mystical? Is it as technical? Is it as complex as it appears to be on the outside, or are there some basic truths that once you dive into it that you kind of understand, and kind of a basic blueprint that all of these songs work off of, that once you understand it, it's just like kind of a snap?
I mean, that whole scene, the whole sort of LA beat scene, if you mean that, like, I don't necessarily see myself like trying to force myself into that anymore, but I think that there definitely are like a few tricks that everybody was using. Like there was that whole side chaining thing where I guess the second I sort of figured that out when I started producing, I was like, oh, like shit, it's that easy. Like some people were doing pretty simple stuff, like it would just be like a jazzy sample, and then like this like a big kick drum that will. What side chaining does is it removes, I guess, all the sound around it. So like you'll hear the kick, but like not much else. It's
kind of like sopping up the sample as it's popping in.
And like that was definitely like this sort of thing that everybody was on at one point. But yeah, I think the stuff that stuck around, I think it stuck around because people still don't really know how, I don't know, the like Cosmogrammer was made, or like Ras G stuff, or Daedalus and stuff.
And speaking from the position that you're in as an artist who sort of came up emulating someone like Flying Lotus, and sort of making this music in a very DIY way, tell me, is it kind of a night and day difference in your personal experience? Whereas at one time you were unsigned, but now that you're signed and you're releasing music and you've got an album in the kind of coming down the pipe, do you feel, I guess, at least the least bit more secure than you did when you were just kind of, I don't know, making music on your own, or just kind of throwing it out onto the internet and hoping that someone would hear it at some point?
I feel maybe more under pressure, in kind of like a way that I feel like now everybody knows that I'm signed to Brainfeeder. I'm like, oh fuck, like I've actually got to deliver. Like there's like a million other kids like out there who are amazing at making this music stuff, and like now I've kind of got to prove that I'm deserving of this stuff. And like I'm not like, I'm not saying that I am and I'm better than everyone else, or anything like that. I just feel like I have to prove to myself that I can make some crazy shit for this album.
And is there anything that you feel like you're doing now musically or sonically that you're doing that you didn't pull off on this EP, or sort of any directions that you're pushing yourself in that are kind of a sort of unknown territory for you?
I want to start messing about with like my own vocals. I think that's kind of like the final step to making stuff that's more resembling of like a song rather than like a beat. Like I sort of I want to like fully leave beat world, if you get what I mean. Like I I guess the end goal is for people to like hear my shit and they tell their friend and they're like, oh, check out this song rather than like check out this beat or this instrumental. That would be cool.
It seems like for that kind of solo electronic music producer, for people who are making that beat music, it seems like a point of exposure for a lot of them is that they end up working with sort of pop artists or something like that and producing for someone else, and then their name kind of gets around around that way. Is that sort of thing of any interest to you?
I think there's like really weird, super mainstream people who I want to work with just because it'd be kind of funny to me, or like I sort of see something in like the feel of their voice that I feel like could be fun to play with. But I don't know. Personally, for me, it kind of sucked to just be like a guy who lives in like brackets, like produced by blah blah blah. Like I know some people love doing that. Like some people love opening up their thing and like they're like, oh, I'm gonna make a beat tailored to like, I don't know, Snoop Dogg, but it'll be like really weird. Like I can see how that would be a vibe and how that could be like stimulating, but that's not me.
So if you're going to be working with anybody else, it's got to be somebody who's trying to push things as hard as you are or something. And you do have a few features on this album. I mean, are there any other features sort of coming down the pipe? And when I say album, I mean the EP that you released. Yeah. Are there any features sort of coming up on this record that you're going to be dropping too?
I'm not like that far deep into it, I would say, but I mean, not that this would probably ever happen, but one of like my weird dreams is to make a song with like Kyari Pami Pami, or however you say her name.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be fucking crazy. Like I want to make some like super fast stuff with her and like have a rap or something. That'd be the coolest thing.
I think, I don't know, the first step to that could be a really weird remix that somehow generates attention.
Oh,
and
great.
if that happens, then I don't know, just an idea, just a suggestion.
I mean, maybe her people are cool because I think she's doing some stuff with Sophie of PC Music. Mm-hmm. So like, I don't know, maybe they're heads. We'll see.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to hear that. And now that you've brought that sort of click up, I do want to mention, I mean, I certainly hear some, I don't know, at least what I think is a bit of an influence from that camp. I mean, it seems like you're just pulling from so many places, as well versed in the whole, Philo discography as you are. It seems like you're pulling from so many places, and I don't want to say that that you found balance between all of these things, because it just sounds like too much of an onslaught to sort of use a word as kind of calming as balance. It seems like, I don't know, like a really intricate Cirque du Soleil like routine on stage with numerous actors kind of all doing insane acrobatics all at once.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the stuff I make is probably an amalgamation of the things I listen to, but I listen to like a lot of weird Japanese like psychedelic proggy stuff, but then I do listen to like that whole there's not even a name for it right now, but the stuff surrounding PC music, it's definitely like for sure a vibe. I think some people have been calling it like softcore. Like there's some stupid names, but I'm sure something will stick eventually. But like I know the people kind of around that, and like I think in a way people have been comparing my stuff to it just because of the fact that it sounds quite clean. Like I'm not already using like vinyl-y textures. Like I just tried to limit myself to just the sounds I was using rather than just sort of add texture over it. And I guess PC music have like an emphasis on that, but I don't really get the comparisons as far as like I didn't I wasn't trying to make like weird pop music. Like I wasn't trying to mess about with like trancey synth chords and stuff.
Well, that cleanness. I mean, that's a texture in and of itself. You know,
Yeah, true.
it's just not. It's not a rough lo-fi kind of murky, jazzy sort of texture. You know, like you might catch on a lot of different Brainfeeder releases, but a lot of those same records do kind of embrace. I don't know, this postmodern, this futurist kind of sound that it seems like both of your feet are very much in that side of the sound, whereas that I don't know, that idea of things being more lo-fi, more textured, noisier. It seems like you're certainly informed by that,
Yeah.
but you're the next step past it.
That's cool. I mean, I think like just like not that like I really give a shit, but the kind of the things people were saying, like I heard bubblegum bass quite a lot, like in I don't know, like little reviews and stuff that people have done. And like I think definitely pretty much in every single review there was like a PC music comparison. So I mean I'm gonna try and figure out like why, like precisely why people are making that comparison and sort of
I think it's the bright synths, it's the
yeah.
clean production, it's the chirpy vocals.
I wanna
And I think those are to people who don't produce music, those are some really obvious parallels to draw.
yeah.
Obviously the when it comes to how busy your music is, a lot of the chord progressions you use, the weird sonic experiments, all that stuff. I mean, some of that stuff doesn't necessarily apply, but I guess it depends on who you're talking about within PC music. I mean, some of their productions, like from Sophie, can get kind of off the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I would say those are probably the reason why people are drawing those comparisons. Personally, no reason to dive into it. That's why I'm telling you right now. Those are some of the most obvious sort of parallels to draw between those two worlds.
Yeah. I think like I love all those guys, like they're like fucking geniuses to me, but I think that's probably something I want to move past eventually. Like I don't want to just like dig myself too deep into that whole thing. Oh shit, I'm getting a FaceTime.
Oh, that's fine.
Oops.
I was thinking about wrapping this thing up anyway, since you've been such a good talkative guest and kind of pulled the veil back on this music that you're working on. Moving into the future, and I appreciate you sort of being intimate with your answers here and having a kind of frank conversation about what you're doing. But in the future, is this kind of idea of staying under this pen name and kind of anonymity and all that stuff, is that going to be really sort of important to you and kind of the Iglooghost name?
I mean, I think it's pretty fun to sort of bullshit and lie. Like I really like. I mean, obviously, I'm just talking as a real human boy right now, but it's pretty fun to create like a sort of fiction or like a lore around yourself. Like I'd like to think that I've like lied a few times maybe in this interview just for fun, or like I just like talk shit on Twitter like all day, like that. I think it's fun to combine real life and bullshit together. Like it sort of freaks people out a little bit.
I agree, and I think it kind of makes it easier to sort of maintain the mysticism around what you're doing, which I think going into the future is going to be really important to the future of a lot of music careers. I mean, looking back, some of the most still today relevant and successful artists have an element of anonymity to what they do. People like Daft Punk or MF Doom. Even Flying Lotus, who, even though we know who he is and we've seen him, he doesn't do a whole lot of interviews, at least not on video, at least not on audio. He seems like a very elusive character. And I think that elusivity is really important. Death Grips as well. Artists who kind of lurk back and hang in the shadows, I think, intrigue a lot of people. Just kind of giving people everything that there is to know about you might generate interest for a little while, but I think unless you're able to kind of continue titillating them and keep up a bit of a sexy facade, people lose interest really quickly.
Yeah, I'm pretty sexy.
Well, then what I recommend is that maybe when your career is waning at some point, then reveal how sexy you are to the world to generate interest once again. Maybe get naked on the cover.
I'll start dropping some nudes on the regular.
Okay.
Y'all are gonna see some Igloo nudes.
I'll link them to your Twitter page down in the description box, so that I imagine you're probably going to drop them there, right?
Yeah, tonight.
Okay, great. All right, guys. Well, again, I want to thank my guest on this episode of the podcast, Mr. Iglooghost, for coming on, talking about his music and a myriad of other things on this episode of the podcast. Mwah. Thank you, dude.
Yeah, thank you.
Mwah. And you guys are the best. Thank you for listening again. Anthony Fantano, Iglooghost, forever.
Forever.